With Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out in under 2 months, there's been plenty of hype building up around the game, and with that comes a number of new players who want to dive into the series for the first time. Problem? The storyline of Kingdom Hearts is one of the most convoluted on the planet, and while that's kind of part of the fun of the series, it makes it pretty difficult for newcomers to really grasp what's going on. So, in my infinite insanity, I decided to help simplify the learning process for new players and actually summarize the games in a nice, digestible format. However, I'm going to be taking a less conventional approach to these summaries. Many of my contemporaries, and even Square Enix itself, have set out to summarize each game in sequence, installment by installment, and I find this messy. Or maybe clunky is the better word. Regardless, I think newcomers might get lost in the chaff about those videos when really the most important thing to keep track of are the individual characters and where they'll be on their own journeys at the start of Kingdom Hearts 3. To that end, this is going to be a brief series of hopefully short videos that take a look at different collections of characters from around the series in order to give you the Cliff Notes versions of who they are, why they do what they do, and where they stand in the greater conflict, all of which is sprinkled in with my personal brand of sarcasm and loving deprecation. I'll be starting with the core cast and then moving into more obscure or seemingly less relevant characters as I go on. This should serve as a simple, quick catch-up guide for the uninitiated and a nice refresher for fans that haven't really involved themselves in the series recently or haven't played one or more of the mini spin-off games. For those that are curious, I'll be starting with the main cast from Destiny Island, the small contingent of main characters that originate from Destiny properties, and then covering the big bad of the franchise in all of his forms. After that, I'll go on to look at the second set of main characters that seem to coalesce around Twilight Town, the important characters from the prequel installments of the series, Organization 13, and finally all the miscellaneous people that I think might be important to know about. Please keep in mind this is only really focused on the characters themselves and won't be diving deeper into the mechanics of the series beyond what is absolutely necessary. If you want a more comprehensive but much longer take, I highly recommend the Kingdom Hearts Timeline Project by Everglow8444, which puts the entire series in chronological order for your viewing pleasure. Additionally, there's a video series by Nscosplay that truncates and summarizes the science and lore of the series into much more digestible bites that I also recommend. Be sure to check out those links in the description down below. Don't forget to also like these videos, comment on them, and share them around as they come out, as well as subscribing to my channel while clicking the bell so you can be here the minute they were each released. Consider also becoming a member of the channel by going to the YouTube gaming version of my profile and clicking that join button so you can get a nifty little icon next to your name every time you comment on one of the chats while I stream. And, if you feel like helping me out with these videos, please check out my Patreon, where $1 or more will get you access to the group Discord server, where like-minded and disparate-minded individuals will come together to discuss the most inane things imaginable, like how effective my bird avatar Kelpie might be as a cereal mascot. Special thanks go out to my most recent patrons Vincent Chiang, Jennifer David, Cara Grace, Mediocrity4, Noob600, and Mark Fulgencio, as well as all of my other lovely patrons who help keep this little channel afloat. With all that out of the way, I thank you all so much for watching, and we move on to our very first recap. Sora. Jumping straight into things, let's start the recap series off with the character that kicked it all off in the first place. Sora is the central protagonist of the franchise, having helmed 4 of the games himself and played a critical role in just about all of the others. He's a warm, compassionate kid who has the strongest sense of justice but not the strongest sense of intelligence. Basically think the prototypical shonen hero, but perfected to a science. He was born on Destiny Island, and in that moment his newly born heart, as in the metaphysical heart, not his actual physical heart, came into contact with the heart of a boy named Ventus, who after severe trauma was reaching out for aid. Sora, being a good kid from the outset, offered to help, and the two formed a connection while Sora's heart temporarily supported Ventus's heart in healing itself. Fast forward 4 years and Sora is, well, just chilling on his home island when Ventus's heart appears to him again, having followed their connection after effectively dying in some kind of battle. Note the word effectively here because, as you will quickly learn, no one in the series actually dies. Ever. Even if you have the body. No, especially if you have the body, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Point is, Ventus's injured heart takes shelter within Sora's, though since Sora is 4, he won't quite remember this happening, especially since it happened in a metaphysical dream plane called the Dive into the Heart. Now we fast forward to the actual first game in the franchise where Sora is 14. After experiencing the world's coolest dream sequence, he is woken to spend time with his 2 best friends, Kairi and Riku. It's quickly established that the boys have a friendly rivalry, and Sora and Kairi seem to share burgeoning romantic feelings for each other. The 3 plan to use a makeshift raft they built to explore other worlds, but a night before they're set to leave, a storm hits the island and begins to literally tear it apart. Sora rushes to the island and finds his friends already there. Kairi instinctually or accidentally ends up giving her heart to Sora for safekeeping, and Riku is consumed by darkness. This leaves Sora alone to survive the monsters attacking the islands, learning that he can summon a weapon called a Keyblade in order to fend them off. After being sucked into the world-destroying death orb that has been forming above his planet, he wakes up in Traverse Town. There, he befriends a number of people, including Donald and Goofy of Disney fame, and together they leave Traverse Town in order to search for their missing friends and fight off the threat of the monsters plaguing the universe at large, the Heartless. The three set out to combat the menace by sealing the heart of each world they travel to, which stops the Heartless from consuming those worlds. During this, Sora has a number of encounters with Riku that reveal that Riku has somehow sided with the Heartless and a gang of villains. There's eventually a showdown between Sora and Riku, who learns that he is possessed by a man named Ansem. After besting Ansem and learning Kairi's heart is inside of him, Sora doesn't hesitate to sacrifice himself in order to free her and bring her back to life. Though he is turned into a Heartless for a brief period of time, Kairi manages to pick him out of the pack and bring him back to life. Remember this moment for when we get to one of the later parts in the series, it's incredibly important. After regrouping with his friends, Sora sets out to the Nexus of Heartless Power, the end of the world, and defeats Ansem there in the ruins of Destiny Island before he can summon Kingdom Hearts. Another crazy metaphysical entity that, when properly manipulated, can control all the worlds in existence. Unfortunately, even though Sora succeeded, it doesn't mean he's getting a happy ending, and he is ultimately separated from both of his friends, being brought to some random grassy field that's never really given a proper name. While exploring this field, he, Donald, and Goofy stumble upon Castle Oblivion, a scary looking place that no sane person would enter. So of course the idiots enter it. Once inside, they quickly encounter several cloaked figures that call themselves Organization 13. Drawn by the feeling and not too subtle hints from the organization that their missing friends are inside the castle, they begin to progress through it, seemingly repeating key events from their last adventure as they go. More horrifyingly, the deeper they go, the more the memories of their friends and lives are called into question as they slip away without warning. It gets so bad that Sora's memories of Kairi are completely replaced by a different girl, one called Naminé. Near the top floor, Naminé is able to show herself to Sora and explain that she's a witch that can manipulate both his memories and the memories of those connected to him. After defeating two of the organization members running the castle, including the head honcho Marluxia, Naminé puts Sora, Donald, and Goofy into a deep sleep so that she can repair the memories in his heart and the hearts of those that knew him. We pick up 1 year later in Kingdom Hearts 2, after waking up from his slumber in Twilight Town. He befriends some locals, and with their help, he, Donald, and Goofy get on a train that takes him to the Wizard Tower, where a powerful sorcerer Yen Sid resides. Yen Sid then proceeds to explain how the Heartless were only really kind of mildly annoyed by Sora at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. You'd think that it'd be more of a big deal killing the big kahuna, but fine, whatever. And that the Heartless are back at it again with them black vans. He also mentions a new threat, the Nobodies, and their leaders, Organization 13, who Sora encountered earlier, but due to the memory shenanigans, he doesn't remember them or Naminé. As far as Sora is concerned, Castle Oblivion never happened. Armed with this new info and some nifty powers, the trio once again set out to stop the evil and find Riku, since they know that Kairi is okay back on Destiny Islands after the end of the first game, and encountered King Mickey just before boarding the train. They reason if the king can escape from the world of darkness, where Riku and him were both trapped, Riku can too, so he must be somewhere out there. Along the way, Sora learns that the organization's plan is relatively simple, to have them kill Heartless so the hearts they release go towards a new and improved moon-shaped Kingdom Hearts that they can use to control for their own purposes. While this is happening, Sora learns that Kairi has been taken from Destiny Island as a captive by the organization, and in a moment of desperation is willing to give in to the darkness if it means fighting his friends. He is rejected by one of the organization members since that's not what they want from him, and eventually Sora manages to track down the organization's stronghold through a portal in a digital replica of Twilight Town. Yeah, just tuck the whole replica thing away for a rainy day. That comes up a lot with other characters in the franchise. Upon arriving in the world that never was, Sora is drawn to the dive into the heart and is attacked by a boy also wielding a keyblade, leading to an intense fight where Sora is ultimately victorious. The boy congratulates Sora on his victory and compliments him, returning Sora to reality ultimately confused by what just happened. Sora and friends fight their way to the top of the organization base, reunite with Kairi and Riku, and confront the leader of the organization, Xemnas, in a pretty epic tag team fight with Riku. With Xemnas destroyed, the two are trapped in the world of darkness and accept their fates. However, a bottled letter, something sent by Kairi earlier in the second game, finds them, and through reading her words out loud, they find their way back home, splashing down in the oceans back at Destiny Islands. Sometime later, after things have cooled down, Sora and Riku receive a letter from the king informing them that he has learned that Sora is the key to helping a number of different people escape from their own suffering. A list that includes Ventus, though again, Sora's memory of Ventus is still non-extant at this point. It's also asked that Sora and Riku come back to the Wizard Tower so even more can be explained to them, so the two set out for it. Arriving at Yen Sid's dig, Sora and Riku agree to undergo the Mark of Mastery exam to become the Keyblade Master in order to fight Master Xehanort, a villain from the past that we'll get to. He's getting his own video in the future, trust me, he needs it. Back on track, Sora and Riku are actually sent back in time by Yensid to just before their island was destroyed. The two steal their own raft and head out to the ocean to find a new type of world, the Sleeping Worlds. After being caught in a fight with Ursula, they're separated and enter seemingly different dream spaces. Sora and Riku explore the Sleeping Worlds independently, but simultaneously, seemingly overlapping with one another in different planes of existence. Near the end of this journey, Sora is confronted by a young Master Xehanort who begins to explain his evil plan. Again, I'll come back to this in his own video because that's a whole basket of mess. What's important is that Ursula separating Sora and Riku was the goal, so that Xehanort could corrupt Sora's heart via his clothes of all things, and ultimately possess him as a fulfillment of his evil plans. This also coincides with Sora getting a good glimpse inside his own Frankenstein heart, seeing all the different connections he's made, even the ones he's forgotten about or was never aware of. Sora is seemingly lost to the darkness but then rescued by his friends. After returning to the real world and the present, Riku dives back into Sora's dreams to rescue him one last time. They both awake and Yensid only passes Riku as a Keyblade Master, which Sora takes pretty well and it's still ecstatic to hear that his friend made it. Sora sets out on his own for a little while to the Sleeping Worlds to thank all the adorable little critters that helped him during his exam, the Dream Eaters, and when he gets back he discovers that everyone else has been set out on their own personalized assignments. Yensid comments that Sora has, as a consequence of failing his exam, lost much of his power, and in order to reclaim it he should seek out another hero that has gone through something similar. Frustrated by this Metroid-esque ass pull, Sora, Donald, and Goofy remember Hercules, a friend of theirs from one of the worlds they visited during Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. Seeing no other real candidates, the trio set off to meet with him, and this is presumably where Kingdom Hearts 3 will pick up. With that, we're ending this video here. Trust me when I say that not all these videos are going to be so focused on one character at a time. Sora and later Xehanort are just exceptions to what I hopefully will be a more compact series of videos. The second character this series will recap can very easily be seen as the series' deuteragonist. Riku is a bold young man from Destiny Islands and is best friends with both Sora and Kairi. When we first meet him in Kingdom Hearts 1, he's cocky and self-assured, but over the course of the games he's become less so, questioning if he's making the correct choices in his life. Chronologically speaking, the first major event in his life in regards to the plot of the series happened back when he and Sora are both 4 years old. Well, technically speaking, he was probably 5, he's a year older than Sora. He comes into contact with a man named Terra who passes on the ability to wield a Keyblade to him, though Riku doesn't understand exactly what happened in this circumstance. Fast forward to Kingdom Hearts 1, he's now 15 and dreams of exploring the worlds outside of Destiny Island. This dream happens to come true, but not quite how he initially intended. Instead of exploring the ocean on a raft with his friends, he instead opens his heart to darkness when the Heartless start devouring his world. He ends up waking up a Hollow Bastion which Maleficent was using as a base of operations for her cabal of Disney villains. She takes him under her wings, promising to help him find his friends, but ultimately is planning on corrupting him to her cause. Using a chance run-in with Sora, Donald, and Goofy, she plants the idea that Sora has replaced both Riku and Kairi with the affable Disney stooges, and he agrees to basically become her errand boy. He commits a number of heinous acts across all the Disney worlds, namely kidnapping Princess Jasmine from Agrabah, scaring the living daylights out of Pinocchio, and creating an evil shadow clone of Sora. This culminates in a confrontation between Sora and Riku at Hollow Bastion, where Sora's Keyblade, for a time, trades hands. See, Sora's Keyblade was actually Riku's, the one that was passed down by Terra. However, giving himself over to darkness forced the thing to jump to Sora. With Sora emotionally disjointed by this point in his journey, Riku was able to take it back, but after a pep talk from the beast, Sora is able to reclaim the blade and fight off Riku. Panicked, Riku gives into the darkness even more in order to gain more power to fight off Sora, and ultimately becomes possessed by the real mastermind behind both the Heartless and the Disney villain team, a man named Ansem. Riku manages to resist the possession briefly. Take notes on that, I'll come back to it much later on in this series recap. But ultimately he loses his corporeal form to Ansem and his heart and soul become trapped in the realm of darkness, which is sort of like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. At the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, Ansem has constructed the first Kingdom Hearts we see in the series, and it's a big door that opens the path between the realms of light and darkness. If it stays open, darkness will pour out and consume the worlds of light, so that thing has to close ASAP. After Ansem is defeated by Sora, Riku's body returns to him in the realm of darkness. He arrives on his side of the door and sacrifices himself by volunteering to close it from the inside, making Sora to promise to take care of Kairi before it shuts. Next we see him, he's waking up in the basement of Castle Oblivion at the same time that Sora's running through it. He's guided towards the exit by a mysterious man named Diz, as well as King Mickey himself, who was also stuck in the realm of darkness with him back when the whole door shenanigans happened. Riku encounters two organization members and, like Sora, bests both of them, though not before getting cloned by one of them. This clone only exacerbates an internal struggle he has over the darkness in his heart, and eventually he manages to defeat the clone, kill the organization members, and tame the remnants of Ansem that permanently have stained his heart. Finally exiting the castle, he decides to take the middle road from now on, both figuratively and literally, advancing on towards the dawn, as so he puts it. He is next seen helping Diz fulfill his own plans by assisting in restoring Sora's memories in the wake of Castle Oblivion. There's a snag, however, as he needs to subdue two powerful X-Organization members, Xion and Roxas, and in order to beat the latter, he needs to give in fully to the darkness inside of him. This ends with victory over Roxas, but leaves him with the appearance of Ansem. If any of you are wondering, this fight is the badass secret ending from Kingdom Hearts 1. We pick up with him in Kingdom Hearts 2, where he finishes up with his duties involving helping Sora restore his memories. He then vanishes for what feels like half the game and only shows up in a meaningful way at the end of the game when Sora is making his charge through the world that never was. When Diz enacts his final plans, the machine he's using backfires and cleans Riku's heart, which means instead of looking like an evil pointy-faced ice cream cone of death, he now looks like a walking Hot Topic ad. He reconciles with Sora and Kairi, they all have a heartfelt moment, and he makes a final charge against Xemnas with Sora. His story closely mirrors Sora from that point forward up until the two enter the Keyblade Master Trials under Yen Sid's orders. Riku and Sora are separated at the beginning of the game, and what ends up happening is that Sora is the only person actually traveling through the sleeping worlds. Riku has instead been dragged into Sora's dreams and become a Dream Eater, an entity designed to fight nightmares, which are the monsters that replace the Heartless for Dream Drop Distance. While Sora goes through what was intended for the real exam, Riku has been protecting Sora from the influences of Master Xehanort, who has been interfering with the exam since the word go. Riku only learns all this when it's too late, however, arriving just in time to stop Sora from being completely possessed, but not in enough time to stop him from briefly falling into the darkness. Riku manages to repel Xehanort and his cronies, along with the help of a number of allies that have wormed their way into the dream world, and rescues Sora. After that, he dives into Sora's dreams one last time to wake him up from the darkness encroaching on his heart. Afterward, Riku is made an official master, Sora isn't, but everyone is happy all around regardless. With Sora awake, Yen Sid begins shuffling people off on the different various missions. Riku ends up bringing Kairi to the tower in order to train her as a Keyblade wielder, yeah, don't worry, we'll get to that, while revealing that Aqua, a close friend of Terra and Ventus, was actually at the door closing back in Kingdom Hearts 1. Riku gets pissed that she's been trapped down there for years, especially since she apparently helped him all invisible hand style. It's explained that going after her back then would have been a fool's errand, since getting out of the realm of darkness with her would almost have been impossible with how strong the protagonists were at that point. Now, however, Riku and Mickey, both being masters, are qualified to enter the Dark Realm and pull her out, which is where we'll see them in Kingdom Hearts 3. I think that goes well for them. Oh. Next up is Kairi, the proverbial third wheel of the Destiny Island crew, both according to her amount of initiative in the story, and according to about half the fanfiction community. In reality, she's the spunkiest of the island crew, a kind but incredibly playful girl who's prone to bouts of energetic snap decisions. She's fiercely protective of her friends, often throwing herself into harm's way to keep her loved ones safe, and is particularly defensive of Sora. Jokes about the gay shipping in the fandom aside, her relationship with Sora is probably the closest we'll ever get to an actual plot-driven romance in the series. Kairi's story begins when she's living in Radiant Garden when she's 4 years old and living with her grandmother. She meets the previously mentioned Aqua, who senses some incredible light inside Kairi's heart, which will become important later. She wards Kairi with a spell that will lead her to someone that will protect her in her most dire moments, and inadvertently Kairi touches Aqua's Keyblade, inheriting the ability to wield Keyblades herself. Not that that will be relevant for a little while. About a year after this encounter, Radiant Garden is attacked and almost completely destroyed by Heartless and Darkness. It's assumed that this is when Aqua's ward first kicks in, and Kairi shows up on Destiny Islands on the night of a meteor shower. Fast forward 9 years to Kingdom Hearts 1, where she's 14. Again, she, Sora, and Riku are plotting to leave the island on their raft. The night of the storm, Kairi also went to the island to make sure the raft was safe, but wound up inside the cave on the island. When Sora finds her, she appears ill and collapses into him, and in this moment she transfers her heart into his. Whether she did this on purpose, somehow out of instinct, or because of Aqua's charm isn't really clear, but the idea is that Kairi's heart is actually traveling with Sora through most of Kingdom Hearts 1. Her body, however, somehow winds up in possession of Maleficent, who uses it as leverage to further pull Riku onto her side. It is revealed that Kairi is one of 7 princesses of heart, women and girls with incredibly pure hearts that serve as catalysts to open Kingdom Hearts, which is why she, along with so many other memorable Disney characters, were kidnapped. When Sora learns that Kairi's heart is inside of him, he sacrifices himself and she comes to life just in time to see him fade away. Even after he's gone, she's quick to defend him, and while fleeing, she instinctually picks out his Heartless and somehow revives him. Sora, Kairi, Donald, and Goofy go back to Traverse Town where they'll all regroup and collect themselves. This gives Sora and Kairi a moment to have a heart-to-heart and acknowledge that because their hearts were linked, they'll never be far apart. This comes in useful because literally the next time we see her it's at the end of the game when Destiny Island is being restored from the end of the world. She gets dragged away from Sora and they reaffirm their promise to find each other again once they're separated. She doesn't appear much in the intervening year, and from what I can tell, she was heavily affected by the memory shenanigans Naminé put on Sora, only barely able to recall him when no one else can. Sometime when she's 15 years old, her heart comes into contact with a boy named Roxas, and through him, Sora, though only briefly. Feeling invigorated by the connection, she writes a letter to Sora and sends it in a bottle out into the ocean. Eventually, an organization member named Axel arrives and tries to kidnap her. She escapes through a portal and winds up in Twilight Town, where she briefly befriends some of the kids there. Unfortunately, Axel tracks her down and successfully takes her, only for her to get taken away from him by another organization member named Sayax. She's taken prisoner to the world that never was, but is freed by Naminé, who helps her escape. When the two are cornered, they're rescued by Riku, who Kairi accepts even in his altered state. They group up with Sora, have a big hug over things, and when they head out, Kairi is able to fight back using her own Keyblade, though obviously nowhere near as well as Sora or Riku. From here, she plays moral support through the rest of the fights in the game, except for the last one where everyone in their group got the hell out of Dodge because the world was literally collapsing around them. She returns to Destiny Islands with everyone but Sora and Riku, and her letter from earlier is the reason Sora and Riku are able to return home. She welcomes them back, and the next time we see her, she's delivering Mickey's note about the Mark of Mastery exam to Sora and Riku. After making Sora promise to come back, they head off and she's left on the islands alone. Later, Riku seeks her out and they travel to Yen Sid's to get her properly trained as a Keyblade wielder. Presumably this is where Kingdom Hearts 3 will pick up, with her getting trained alongside Axel's human form to be a proper Keyblade wielder. What's that, you ask? Axel's human form? Yeah, trust me, we'll get to that. It's kind of a biggie. But that's all the time we have for this video. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Next up on the chopping block is the patriarch of the House of Mouse himself, King Mickey. He's, Mickey Mouse. There's really not too much to add to this. He actually pretty closely follows his animated character arc, if you can even say he has one. Over the course of the games we see Golden Age Mickey, Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, Modern Mickey, and the House of Mouse Mickey, though his personality is tailor-fit to the story itself. So the older he gets, the wiser he becomes to the mechanics of the setting. His earliest appearance chronologically is oddly enough in Kingdom Hearts 2, where we get a glimpse into the past of the world, Timeless River, which seems to be a snapshot of a time long past. Here he really doesn't have much of a character arc or even plot beats, fitting considering the type of animations common at the time period and the tone the world sets. Regardless, it is here where he develops a strong friendship with Donald and Goofy, as well as a long-standing rivalry with Pete, his abusive boat captain. The dynamic is literally Steamboat Willie. This should be fairly easy to grasp. Sometime later, Mickey learns of Keyblades and becomes an apprentice to Yen Sid, a powerful wizard and Keyblade master. Before you ask, yes, the Fantasia Broom incident is in fact canon. During his apprenticeship, he goes on a mission to the country of Musketeers, where he hones his sword fighting and wins the heart of Princess Minnie, who will go on to become his queen. When the Birth by Sleep era runs around, Mickey is taking his Mark of Mastery exam to become a Keyblade Master. In the middle of this, he runs away using an item called the Star Shard, which magically transports the user wherever they're most needed. It's a cheap writer's MacGuffin, but it works, and somehow it lands him in the prequel series Kingdom Hearts Key for a brief spell. Not sure when that happens in this timeline, considering it involves a huge amount of time travel, but I'm just mentioning it here because it's the only place it fits. Back on topic, this means from the majority of Birth by Sleep's plot, he's really just hopping from point to point, during which he befriends Ventus and Aqua, who are on their own journeys, as well as challenging Master Xehanort and his disciple Vanitas, who are doing wacky villain shenanigans. This all ends poorly for just about everyone, with Aqua, Ventus, and Terra basically unreachable by the end of it. But Mickey becomes a master, so that's a plus. Now a master in himself, he has his own little adventures that are never really detailed except for when he comes into contact with a king sage named Ansem from Radiant Garden, who shares his concern over the darkness that's slowly starting to creep out from around the worlds. This is also when he meets Ansem's apprentice, Xehanort, who has direct relations to Master Xehanort, but is also kinda his own thing? Look, we'll get to the mess that is Xehanort's character in the next installment. Let's just say this encounter leaves Mickey uneasy. Rolling around to when Kingdom Hearts 1 takes place, Mickey, steadily more concerned with the darkness that has started to eat the worlds wholesale, finds an entry point into the realm of darkness and enters it. His goal is to find the dark parallel to Sora's Keyblade, which allows them both to seal the door to darkness from both sides and prevent more worlds from being consumed. On his journey, he finds Aqua, who has been trapped in the realm of darkness for 10 years and has been fighting day and night to stay alive. This girl, she's seen some things by this point. Together they find the Dark Realm key and find Riku just in time to secretly protect him from the coming threats. Mickey winds up separated from Aqua, but helps Sora, Riku, Donald, and Goofy seal the door and save the worlds. His status after this is a little blurry, just like everyone else's immediately following the Kingdom Hearts 1 incident. Seriously, what the hell is that freaking field? He winds up in Castle Oblivion and helps Riku through it, both emotionally and physically, and acts as Riku's confidant and travel companion for some time following the events of the castle. Eventually though, they do split apart thanks to Riku's insecurities. The next we see him isn't really notable, it's really just Riku somewhat explaining the events of 358 Days Over 2 to King Mickey before Riku makes his own suicide attack on Roxas. The only reason I make note of it when I could just glance over it is that this is the last performance role for Mickey's voice actor of 32 years, Wayne Allwine, who was the voice actor I grew up hearing. Rest in peace, Allwine. You helped shape a generation. Fun fact to lift us from this more dour subject matter, did you know that he was married to Russi Taylor, the voice of Minnie Mouse, since 1986? That's honestly kind of adorable. There, have a nice heartwarming story for the child in you. Moving on, in Kingdom Hearts 2 he plays a more present role, though not necessarily a more active one. He mostly shows up to lob exposition at Sora and the player, like revealing that the Ansem encountered in Kingdom Hearts 1 was really the heartless of a man named Xehanort, and the real Ansem was a kindly scientist man. Yeah, Jesus Christ, I am dreading explaining this later. Anyway, cutting ahead to the end of the game, he confronts Diz in the world that never was, outing him as Ansem the Wise, the original kindly scientist Ansem who was disguised this entire time and plotting revenge against the student who ended up stealing his name. I'll conclude this when I get to Ansem the Wise's character arc, but Mickey only really plays observer to a lot of plot beats throughout the series, this included. This is especially true when he and the main cast besides Sora and Riku escape to Destiny Islands and remain there while Sora and Riku finish off the big bad of Kingdom Hearts 2. When the duo returns, there's much rejoicing, and Mickey heads home with Donald and Goofy to chronicle Sora's journey. This is basically the plot of Coded, and damned if I actually want to explain Coded, especially since I have not played it, and every trusted source I have has actively warded me away from it, so I'll just give you the cliff notes of the cliff notes I have online. Using shenanigans, Mickey digitizes Sora's journal, which has been maintained by Jiminy Cricket, in order to restore pages erased by Naminé when she did her whole memory manipulation shtick. In restoring them, he learns all the information that pushes him and Yen Sid to call Sora and Riku forward for their Marks of Mastery, thus kickstarting Dream Drop Distance. He's present for the beginning of the Mark of Mastery exam, but leaves for Disney Castle when he learns that Minnie is being held hostage by Maleficent, who wants the data Mickey extracted from the journal. With the help of Axel's human form Lee, Mickey fights her off and returns to Yen Sid's tower in time to help Riku overcome all the crazy going down inside of Sora's sleeping mind, along with Lee, Donald, and Goofy. After Sora is rescued, Mickey takes care of a few housekeeping matters like getting Kairi set up for training and informing Riku about Aqua's current predicament in the Realm of Darkness. With that done, both he and Riku, now being masters, both of them head out to rescue Aqua, which is again where we find them in Kingdom Hearts 3. Donald and Goofy, well, they're Donald and Goofy. Donald is a mage, Goofy is a tank, both are basically just cannon fodder for Sora to throw at Heartless until they die, and really don't contribute much to the plot. They involve themselves in scenes, yes, but rarely do they add much. They befriend Mickey and they have a few adventures together, especially when they're all musketeers together, but really they're not relevant until Kingdom Hearts 1. They receive a letter from Mickey telling them to find Sora, in not so many words, and they do that when they go to Traverse Town. They quickly befriend him and they basically provide the chauffeur service for most of the series, what with how they're the ones that own the Gumi ship that they fly between worlds on. From there, they're basically glued to Sora's hip through thick and thin, providing comic relief, friendly shoulders to cry on, and small arguments to keep investment in Sora's friendship with them engaging enough throughout the series. The biggest change comes in Kingdom Hearts 2, where Goofy supposedly dies, driving Sora to go absolutely ham on a veritable army of Heartless, but other than that, they really don't do much. And don't worry, Goofy wasn't actually dead. I mean, they're not gonna kill a Disney character, not one that isn't supposed to be dead. In Dream Drop Distance, they jump in to save Sora alongside Mickey and Lee, which in all fairness is kind of what drives Xehanort away at the end of the game. So I guess they did contribute at that bit. Ultimately, they're glued to Sora again at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3, and I don't think that'll be changing anytime soon. Finally for today's video, we've got good old Yen Sid. Yen Sid is easily the worst character in this franchise, which considering his name is Disney's name backwards is kind of disappointing. He doesn't really do anything. I don't think he's left his tower once the entirety of the series. From what little we know, he was a master alongside both Master Xehanort and Master Ericus back in the day, Ericus being the master that trained Ventus, Terra, and Aqua. After that, he gives up being a Keyblade master and just sits in his tower all day practicing magic. That's really about it. He's basically just a series' go-to exposition dump. Things happen in Birth by Sleep, Terra, Aqua, and Ventus go to him for advice. Sora wakes up in Kingdom Hearts 2, Yen Sid explains half the plot. He sort of does something encoded in Dream Drop Distance by sending Sora and Riku off on their Marks of Mastery, but not much else. He also says he's going to train the new Keyblade wielders, but then immediately offloads that task to his good buddy Merlin. Lazy son of a... Maybe I'm just jealous. Dude gets to laze around in his tower all day reading the books that he wants to read, doing magic, getting credit for being only tangentially involved in world-spanning wars, and probably having some fun times with his own personal harem of fairies. He's living the life! I'm gonna stop dwelling on this. This is the part of the recap I've been putting off and dreading. Xehanort is hands down the most complicated character in this entire franchise, and this includes the girl who is literally a clone comprised of memories scrapped from the disembodied metaphysical heart of a teenage boy. We'll get to Xion next time, I promise. For everyone tuning in who have never played a Kingdom Hearts game before, this will be the most difficult character for you to wrap your mind around, I guarantee it. Well, let's start off with some basics. Master Xehanort is the main antagonist of the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise, and his influence has been felt through every single game in the series, even if it was primarily retroactive in the first game's case. He starts out as a young man on Destiny Islands who dreams of one day leaving to another world and adventuring, very much a parallel to Sora, Riku, and Kairi. Not really sure what it is about Destiny Island that makes him want to leave that place. If I were in Destiny Island, I would want to stay there for the rest of my life. He eventually does and ends up becoming a Keyblade wielder who is taught under the same master as another apprentice named Ericus. They both basically become brothers and are both named Master Keyblade wielders who have the job of protecting the world's light from darkness. This, however, didn't set well with Xehanort, who was slowly entranced by darkness over his years of training, who ultimately decried light for being too tyrannical and deemed that balance needed to be struck between light and darkness. He researches everything about an event known as the Keyblade War that waged years ago before he was alive, and how the war was centered around a weapon called the Keyblade, which is technically pronounced Keyblade, but that's going to get confusing fast, so I'm using an alternative to keep it distinct from the generic term. This mentality led to a falling out between himself and Ericus. Determined to overthrow tyranny, he sets out to reforge the Keyblade, which will then let him access the heart of all worlds, Kingdom Hearts, and rebalance light and darkness across, well, everything. He finds an apprentice named Ventus and splits the boy into two different entities, his light half, still named Ventus, and his dark half, Vanitas, hoping that both halves will be able to become strong enough to fight each other and kind of activate a universal hack that would let them form the Keyblade without expending much effort. There's more to this particular plan, but I'll cover that when I get to Ventus, Aqua, and Terra's recaps, so the long and short of it is his plan almost works. The Keyblade gets summoned, and he's about 40 vertical feet from Kingdom Hearts, and there's not too much in the way of stopping him except his frail old body. So in order to ensure that he can continue on, he possesses Ventus' friend, Terra, becoming what the fandom affectionately calls Terranort. However, his plan was foiled both because of another of Ventus' friends, Aqua, manages to destroy the Keyblade, and because Terra's anger towards Xehanort was so strong that his friggin' soul possessed his suit of armor in order to beat Terranort into a completely different world. Terranort crashes in the Radiant Garden, and Aqua shows up one last time to try and free Terra from Xehanort's possession. This fails miserably beyond repressing either of Terranort's sets of memories, and Aqua gets trapped in the realm of darkness, so kind of a bad day for Aqua, really. From there, he's recruited by Ansem the Wise and remembers enough to give himself the name Xehanort, which, really bad day for Aqua. Under Ansem's tutelage, he begins researching darkness and even experiments with it against Ansem's very firm orders not to. It's around this time that he begins impersonating Ansem in order to break into the castle's computer, as well as recruiting the other apprentices to help with his experiments. Eventually, these experiments are found out and shut down, but not before King Mickey gets wind of them and ends up at Radiant Garden to consult Ansem the Wise. He continues his research in secret and is eventually outed a second time, only for him and the other apprentices to turn around and chuck good old Ansem the Wise into the realm of darkness so they can continue their work unimpeded. His desire to gain control of darkness reigniting, he regains use of his own Keyblade and steals the heart of all the apprentices before taking on Ansem's name and stealing his own. As a consequence, they all become heartless, but they all exhibit such strong hearts and wills that the bodies they leave behind also become animated, becoming an entity known as a nobody. These 6 nobodies, Xehanort included, become the first 6 members of Organization 13, with Xehanort's name renamed Xemnas as their leader. Meanwhile, as far as we know, his Heartless, going under the name Ansem, is only one of 2 Heartless we've known to retain human form and sentience. Focusing on the Ansem Heartless to get him out of the way, his goal was to collect the 7 Princesses of Heart and stage a massive invasion of the Realm of Light with the Heartless in order to basically make a bum rush for Kingdom Hearts. He's mostly incorporeal through this, but picks up Riku's body along the way as he manipulates all the Disney villains to his ends. Ultimately though, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness as he's been so dubbed by the series, is defeated by Sora upon revealing the powerful light of Kingdom Hearts, and will put a temporary pin in Ansem for the moment, because this moment is incredibly important and we'll need to come back to it. Flipping over to Xemnas, his plan was to trick or force Keyblade wielders to kill more Heartless, which would then release those hearts and push them to accumulate into a new, much more accessible Kingdom Hearts. In order to do this, he created Organization 13, a group of nobodies who would help him manipulate the worlds and their occupants to his cause, as well as seek out some loose ends from back in his glory days as Master Xehanort. With the promise of giving them new hearts, the nobodies follow him somewhat without question, though there's a brief uprising that is ironically dealt with for him by Sora getting stuck in the middle of things at Castle Oblivion. He's far less active from any of the other incarnations, as his plans have a natural lethargy and inevitability to them, allowing him time to explore different avenues, such as stealing memories from Sora to create a clone of him that would kill Heartless for him, using an organization member naturally gifted with the ability to wield a Keyblade to kill Heartless for him, and then just to straight up manipulating Sora into killing Heartless for him. By the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, he's almost succeeded, but Sora and friends have waded through his defenses and organization members, leaving him outnumbered. Additionally, Ansem the Wise crops up again and, as revenge for being thrown into the void in the first place, activates a machine that ends up backfiring and destroying the almost completed Kingdom Hearts. Xemnas lashes out at the heroes, but is ultimately defeated. Now this is where you might think the story ends, right? He's dead, both his Heartless and Nobody have been killed, right? Oh, if only. Alright, so Nobody and Heartless 101. When both the Heartless and a Nobody of a matched pair are destroyed, all that really happens is that both entities are returned to their original human state, the two separate entities somehow magically finding each other throughout space and time. So with the defeat of Xemnas and Ansem, Xehanort proper is revived, though it's oddly noticeable that it seems to be his original old crotchety body that got revived, not his young Terranort body. This might be in part because of this next bit, which is where things get really insane. So Kingdom Hearts has time travel. Yeah. No, we gotta explain that. I'm not gonna bog you down with the rules of that right now. Trust me, they're kind of complicated and there are a lot of loose ends created by it. Sort of. I'm just gonna hit the important plot details. So going back to Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, when he quote-unquote dies, in his last moments he slingshots his heart into the past so that he can confer with his younger self back on Destiny Islands. He tells his younger self how to time travel, where and when certain key events will take place, and the first makings of a plan start to develop. This plan involves creating 13 powerful darknesses by implanting shards of his own heart into a number of viable hosts. So the past Xehanort travels into the future and forms a second organization from these members, revealing that the backup purpose of the first Organization 13, should they fail to successfully form Kingdom Hearts, was to cull potential candidates for this second organization. Not only that, but previous incarnations of Xehanort count as well, so Old Xehanort, Young Xehanort, Xemnas, and Ansem Seeker of Darkness are all confirmed to be members, not to mention there's a possibility that Terranort qualifies also. All of this is revealed in Dream Drop Distance, where young Xehanort, using time travel, has intervened in Sora's Mark of Mastery exam and attempted to make him the 13th and final member of the new organization. This fails, because friendship, but the new organization is now the lingering threat in the universe going into Kingdom Hearts 3. They seem to be looking for 7 pure lights to counter their 13 darknesses, so just like back with his first attempt, he can summon the Kai Blade and slip inside Kingdom Hearts. And before you ask, why doesn't Xehanort just use time travel in order to automatically win? Time travel in this universe does have rules, but like I said, I skimmed over just about all of them in order to make this an effective character summary. Just know that Xehanort is using time travel to the fullest of his ability in the context of the games and his plans as far as we're aware. This is by far the most complicated part of the series to wrap your mind around, and believe you me, I have problems with understanding it, especially when all the potential paradoxes start cropping up. But I promise you, it actually does hold up under scrutiny, it just requires an encyclopedia of knowledge of the series in order to really grasp it. For that, I would like to recall my previous recommendation to watch Nscosplay series of videos on the franchise, their theories on Kingdom Hearts 103 in particular, as they break down every single facet of time travel in the series in detail. I know watching an hour-and-a-half long convention panel that was recorded on a camcorder isn't the best, and some of the audience can get a little annoying, but the presenter is charismatic enough to carry it even with that layer of detachment. So with the biggest hurdle behind us and all the most central characters established, it's about time we address the next tier of characters who will more than likely play an integral role in the conclusion of this arc of the franchise. Yes, I said arc because apparently Kingdom Hearts is going to be going until I'm dead and buried, isn't it? Today we're focusing on a whole slew of characters who tend to flock around Twilight Town, a town that is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a town that seems to be perpetually in Twilight. Still don't quite get how night and day cycles work in the Kingdom Hearts universe, but I guess it doesn't really matter. This is going to be slightly different from the other videos because these characters are so intertwined that you kinda have to tell their tales simultaneously. There's not really any long stretches in their timelines where they're separated except near the beginning and at the end. To kick it off, let's start with Lee, a young, energetic, and friendly boy from Radiant Garden who hung around all day with his best friend Isa. He briefly meets a Keyblade wielder named Ventus and befriends him, but other than that and a few more playful snippets, we don't really get to learn much about who he was back then other than he was a bit of a troublemaker. At some point, he and Isa were turned into Heartless, potentially by Xehanort himself, and the nature of their strong wills meant that their bodies were returned as nobodies. They were quickly inducted into Organization 13 by Xemnas and renamed Axel and Syax, the 7th and 8th members respectively. From here, the organization lays low and bides time, at least as far as I can tell, so there's not really much of note until they show up next. So we'll cover the next character in line. Roxas is by far the most important character in this part of the recap. His story starts right when Sora releases his heart to save Kairi back in Kingdom Hearts 1. When Sora ends up becoming a Heartless, his nobody appears in front of the abandoned mansion in Twilight Town. Now, why this nobody appears in Twilight Town, I have no clue. As far as I can tell from everything I've reviewed in the last few months, Sora has absolutely zero contact with the town before this point, so I'm guessing nobody's just kind of randomly appear throughout the universe. Regardless, because of Sora's unique connection to Ventus from when he was a child, i.e. holding Ventus's detached heart for safekeeping, his nobody ends up looking like a dead ringer for the, dead fighter. In fact, I have a personal little theory that Ventus and Roxas are actually technically the same person, just with a serious case of memory loss and a bad case of body swapping, but that's not really relevant right now. Now, as an aside, you might be wondering how Sora had a body at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1 and all through Chain of Memories if his body was running around sounding like Jesse McCartney all throughout that period of time. Well, that's because Sora at the end of the first game and all through Chain of Memories is actually a Heartless that's been given shape thanks to Kairi's interference. She, being a Princess of Heart, had the ability to actually give him shape and form, but not actually restore his body to him. So yeah, the Sora we know and love for a significant period of time was just a floating heart with limbs. Back on track, the nobody is discovered by Xemnas, who rearranges Sora's name, throws an X in there, and calls the boy Roxas, inducting him into Organization 13 as the 13th member. He slowly fits into his new home and even befriends Axel. He also willingly aids the organization in forming the moon-sized Kingdom Hearts scene in Kingdom Hearts 2, as they are led to believe by Xemnas that creating it will allow them to reclaim hearts of their own, which is the natural desire of all nobodies. It is around this time that Xemnas visits Sora during an optional boss fight in Kingdom Hearts 1 and samples his memories. How someone scientifically samples memories, I don't know, but we're dealing with some hard metaphysical concepts here, so just roll with it. From this sample, Xemnas uses replica technology to create a duplicate of Roxas as a backup in case Sora and Roxas can't fulfill their roles. The experiment is named Xion and dubbed the 14th member of the organization, though she's not given a throne and her true nature as a copy is hidden from most of the other members. Thanks to Sora's heart actually being a day spa for other wayward hearts, Xion's appearance actually fluctuates depending on who looks at her. More often than not though, she looks like Kairi since those were Sora's strongest memories at the time of the sampling. Xion is put into Roxas' care for training and the two eventually become friends. Axel meanwhile is sent to Castle Oblivion to investigate treachery within the organization faction that has been sent there, to find a location called the Chamber of Awakening, and to capture Naminé. While he's ultimately instrumental in destroying the 5 organization members at the castle, including the ones that weren't traitors, he fails to find the chamber and allows Naminé to escape. During this time, just when Sora is placed into hibernation by Naminé, Roxas falls into a deep coma. After he awakes, he begins experiencing Sora's memories as dreams and hallucinations, and slowly this causes him to lose faith in the organization. When Axel returns, Roxas invites him to hang out with him and Xion, forming a trio of friends for a brief, peaceful stint at the organization. However, as Roxas begins to question more about his own identity, so too does Xion, straining their relationship with Axel and each other. Eventually, Xion, through a combination of encounters with Riku, the man named Diz, and Naminé, learns her true nature as a replica of Sora and flees the organization to find him. Axel, finding out the truth about her, is sent to retrieve her, which causes a definitive split between the three when Roxas witnesses the confrontation but is left out of the loop. Axel also learns that the nature of the replication process means that only Roxas or Xion will ultimately survive. One of them has to die, and he doesn't know which friend to choose. While on a mission, Xion attacks another member of the organization, Xigbar, who sees her as Ventus, and when she escapes, Axel lets her go. In the aftermath, Axel finally tells Roxas the truth about Xion but refuses to disclose Roxas' original somebody, i.e. Sora, prompting Roxas to leave. After besting Syax on his way out, Roxas begins to search for Xion and finds her in Twilight Town on the clock tower where the three hung out most often. She explains the truth to Roxas and reveals that she's become even more like Sora, having been reprogrammed by Xemnas to consume Roxas and become whole. The two fight and eventually Roxas comes out as the reluctant victor. While Xion slowly fades away into nothingness, she gives some parting words to Roxas, wanting him to stop Xemnas' plans, though as she dies, his memories of her begin to fade. Confused, angry, and desperately trying to hold on to his memories of her, he makes a frontal one-man assault on Organization 13, wielding 2 Keyblades after absorbing Xion. However, he is met by Riku, who embraces the power of darkness to defeat Roxas and retrieve him. Roxas is brought back to Diz, has his memory wiped and replaced, and is placed in a digital version of Twilight Town to wait out his remaining days in peace until he can be reintroduced to Sora and become whole. While in this digital recreation, he lives out a seemingly average life, having fun over the summer break. He's joined by digital replicas of some kids from Twilight Town he had hoped to befriend early in his tenure at the organization, Hayner, Pence, and Olette. During the last 6 days of his vacation, Axel and the organization are able to breach the simulation and try to reclaim him, and in doing so, Roxas discovers his affinity with the Keyblade, some of the information on his past, and the fact that he's trapped in a simulation. Seeking answers, he makes his way to the abandoned manor of the town where Sora is being kept. He's intercepted by Axel, and Roxas, having retrieved some of his memories, ends up besting him while drawing 2 Keyblades. Axel retreats, and Roxas moves on to argue with Diz over how he's been manipulated, only to finally relent and accept becoming part of Sora once and for all. After this, Roxas' presence isn't really felt, except for a few instances where his emotions are drawn out in Sora, like crying over seeing Hayner, Pence, and Olette again in the real world. Axel, meanwhile, continues as a servant of the organization, though only briefly. He goes rogue when he realizes that if Sora were to become a Heartless again, Roxas would return. So he kidnaps Kairi as a way of luring Sora into a trap. She escapes briefly in Twilight Town, but he apprehends her again only to lose her a second time, this time to Saïx on the organization's behalf. Still on the run, he has an encounter with Sora where he ends up spilling some of the organization's gold, though he still keeps some of the cards close to his chest. He does apologize for kidnapping Kairi in the first place though, so I guess that's nice. Saïx shows up again and he flees. Much later on, when Sora discovers the portal to the world that never was, he's cornered by too many nobodies for him and his friends to defeat. Axel arrives and helps stop the ambush, but ends up putting his whole essence into a single attack. He fades away after explaining what he was trying to do to Sora in order to see Roxas again. At this point, the 3 are all officially dead. Except they're not. Not quite at least. See, when Sora has his episode near the skyscraper in the world that never was, it's Roxas that pulls him into the dive into the heart, challenging Sora over who's the more worthy other. When Sora wins, Roxas accepts him and seemingly fuses with Sora completely. There's a brief dream shared between Roxas and Axel where they get to say goodbye, though Axel doesn't really stay dead. We'll get to that. We do see Roxas 2 more times as figments projected by Sora, but those are brief and really unremarkable moments, at least in the grand scheme of things. It's just sort of a nice bow on a narrative throughline for Roxas, really. So like I said, Axel isn't really dead. His Heartless was also killed, and if you remember what that means back when I talked about Xehanort, then you know that he's recompiled back into being Lee again. Though, gotta say, I like the name Axel more. Just before he wakes up, Roxas in a dream reminds him of a promise he made to both Roxas and Xion to always bring his friends back. Finding most of his previous organization cronies alive again too, he's confused where Aiza is and sets out to find him. By accident, he interrupts the ransom incident that happened back at Disney Castle while Sora and Riku were asleep in dream drop distance. Lee is brought back to Yen Sid by Mickey so Xehanort's return can be explained to him, and almost immediately Lee asks to be made a Keyblade wielder so he can fight in the upcoming showdown. Meanwhile, in Sora's dreams, there's a brief moment where all insanity is breaking loose and Sora is starting to see different people his heart has touched, one of which being Roxas, who ends up sharing all of his memories with Sora. Likewise, there's even a brief glimpse of Xion among the faces, signaling that she's more than likely not quite as dead as we thought she was. When Riku is rescuing Sora from Xehanort at the end of the game, Lee joins in the rescue, and it's disappointing to see that Saïx is among Xehanort's newly formed second organization. This little section of the timeline ends with Lee revealing that he can wield a Keyblade and that he'll be trained alongside Kairi, who takes it as a bit of a shock. Girls don't normally hang out with previous kidnappers. This is where Kingdom Hearts 3 will presumably pick up for Lee and his story. As for Roxas and Xion, it's anyone's guess, though they're definitely present in a lot of the promotional material, so they're definitely making an appearance somehow. Naminé is an interesting being. Even within the confines of all these different people with mixed up hearts and bodies, she's considered weird. You see, Kairi, being a princess of heart, lacks the darkness in her heart to create a Heartless, but because she passed her heart to Sora and because he became a Heartless, she still ended up creating a nobody, one with her qualities and traits but subsisting off Sora's body to maintain its existence. Because of her unique existence, she lacks memories of her own but gains the power to manipulate the memories residing in Sora's heart and those connected to him. So when she comes to life at Castle Oblivion, again the rules on where nobodies show up are freaking random, the commanding Organization 13 member there, Marluxia, decides to use her for his own plans. He orders her to manipulate Sora's memories while he explores Castle Oblivion and twists them so that he'll become a puppet of his and overthrow the organization. She does so and even supplants the memories of Kairi in his heart to fill her own selfish desires. However, as Sora dives deeper into the castle, Axel frees her and she's able to come clean to Sora about what she's done. He forgives her for it, because of course he does, and after he defeats Marluxia, she puts Sora into stasis so she can repair his memories. She also manages to befriend Riku during his own trek through Castle Oblivion, though he refuses any help she offers in relation to his constant existential struggle against the darkness in his own heart. She also manages to team up with a man named Diz, who assists her in restoring Sora's memories. The two relocate to Twilight Town with Sora in order to hide from the organization. From here, she doesn't do too much. She does befriend Xion when Xion goes rogue looking for answers, and Naminé is even able to explain pretty much everything for her. Her role picks up a little more in Kingdom Hearts 2, where she, Diz, and Riku are overseeing Sora's restoration process, as well as Roxas' time in the digital Twilight Town. When the organization starts attacking Roxas in an attempt to get him back, she's the first to jump in and try to explain the whole situation to him against both Diz and Riku's wishes. When Sora is restored, Diz orders Riku to destroy her since she served her purpose, but he refuses and leaves her with Axel. There's nothing on what happened between then and when she appears again, but the next time we see her, she's infiltrated the organization base and sprung Kairi from her imprisonment under Saïx. Being so close to Kairi causes the two of them to begin to merge at Naminé's expense, and when Riku shows up to rescue the two, Naminé vanishes completely, confident that Riku can protect Kairi. There's a scene near the end of the second game where Naminé and Kairi officially become one, which involves Roxas and Sora going through the same thing. The reason I skimmed over it was that with Roxas it really was just sort of a capstone to something that had already happened. I didn't find it too important, honestly. Similar with the brief flashes of the two we see just before the credits. Other than that, Naminé has only cropped up a couple more times since. Briefly encoded, there was a digital version of her built out of the information stored in Jiminy's journal. Again, I'm not going to get into the dumpster fire that is Coded's plot, but to sum it up simply, she gave the plot dump that got Dream Drop Distance moving. Speaking of, she makes a brief appearance in Dream Drop Distance as someone connected to Sora's heart, but after that, as far as anyone's concerned, she's just nestled comfortably inside Kairi's heart, just kinda chilling there. I'll let you know if Kairi starts developing magic memory powers. Last person on today's list is Ansem the Wise, aka Darkness in Zero, aka Diz. Yes, the name is stupid, but we'll get to that. During the period just before and during Birth by Sleep, Ansem the Wise was the Sage King of Radiant Garden, ruling over the world peaceably and conducting research with his 5 lab assistants. At some point, he discovers a young amnesiac named Xehanort and takes him on as an apprentice. He uses science to probe Xehanort's heart and make a crack at the boy's memories, but begins to regret it as his apprentice becomes unstable. Xehanort loops all the other apprentices into conducting inhumane experiments, and Ansem shuts them down shortly before befriending King Mickey. Upon King Mickey's suggestion, he reviews Xehanort's data from the experiments and realizes that Xehanort was impersonating him in the reports. Too late to stop their descent into darkness, he is flung into the realm of darkness by the apprentices. He grows bitter and resentful of them and begins plotting revenge. He takes on the garish name of Darkness in Zero, aka Diz, and dresses himself up like a rejected boss fight from Final Fantasy X as a disguise. He watches as events unfold from the sidelines, such as the defeat of Xehanort's Heartless in the first Kingdom Hearts. He starts squatting in the mansion just outside Twilight Town because, you know, he's kind of homeless after the coup in Radiant Garden. During the Castle Oblivion arc, he monitors everything going on with Sora and Naminé, and even assists Riku along his path, though while in even further disguise as Xehanort's Heartless. He also reunites with King Mickey, though refrains from revealing his identity, as Mickey would just persuade him to abandon his revenge schemes. He helps oversee Sora's restoration with Naminé, and was instrumental in pushing Riku and Naminé to make the hard decision to make sure he awoke. This included hunting Xion and capturing Roxas, so the former was taken out of their hand when she attempted to willingly hand herself over, but that was foiled by the organization. He develops the digital Twilight Town that they store Roxas in when they catch him, as well as the technology used to digitize hearts. He is dismissive of Roxas and Naminé when it comes to their emotions, since apparently nobodies can't feel them because they don't have hearts, which, yeah, nobodies feel emotions. It takes them a while, but they grow their hearts back gradually, and no one seems to realize this until it's too late to tell any of them. That'll be important 2 videos from now. I reiterate that he tries to have Riku kill Naminé and then vanishes until the end of the game. I kinda covered this in a different video, but Kingdom Hearts 2 has a garbage plot structure. We next see him infiltrating the organization base, which makes him the 5th person to do it this time around, all for the purpose of digitizing the Kingdom Hearts there and sealing it out from under Xemnas' nose. He needs to be rescued by King Mickey eventually, and reveals his identity, sharing a heart-to-heart between kings before activating the machine and waiting for it to finish. The machine begins to overload due to a miscalculation. He has a brief verbal spar with Xemnas as the rest of the protagonists arrive around him, and the machine explodes. This is what causes Riku to go back to his more natural state and irrevocably damages the Kingdom Hearts the organization was trying to summon. Instead of dying, Ansem is flung back into the realm of darkness, seemingly with no way back this time. While he just kinda lounges there, he runs into a Keyblade master named Aqua. He gets her up to date on what's happening in the Realm of Light, since she's been in the Realm of Darkness for quite some time at this point, and even reveals that he hid all of his secret research notes inside of Sora's heart using his digitizing sequence. These notes are then revealed to Riku at the end of Dream Drop Distance as he's trying to save Sora from being consumed by darkness. And this leaves us where the series is today. Where Ansem is or what he's doing? I don't know. We've not seen hide nor hair of him since. Here's hoping he gets a good ending in Kingdom Hearts 3 as well. So do you ever wonder what happened that started the insanity of this series? Did you think that everything that's going on was started by Xehanort? Ha! Xehanort is only the latter stages of the disease. In reality, much of Kingdom Hearts lore was kickstarted over 100 years before anything we saw in the main games. Most of this information early in this video is coming from the Kai spin-off series, which is an MMO that's still technically feeding us information. So know that I'm not going to be covering much because there are still plenty of questions unanswered about it. In the Age of Fairy Tales was a man known as the Master of Masters, a powerful Keyblade wielder who had the gift of prophecy. Knowing he's going to disappear one day, he begins training 6 apprentices and then assigns 5 of them as union leaders to train more Keyblade masters and to gather small motes of light called Lux to help them combat Heartless that are spreading across the worlds. The 6th apprentice he gives a box to protect and a Keyblade set with the Master's eye, which will allow the Master to view every event during which the Keyblade is present. He writes a book of prophecies around these observations and leaves copies of the book in the hands of his apprentices before leaving them in charge of protecting the world and vanishing, only to be seen again in cryptic flashbacks and dream sequences like half the cast of this series already does. Soon enough, infighting begins to erupt among the 5 leaders, especially when one of them reveals that there's a traitor amongst them that has been in cahoots with the darkness. This distrust between them spreads down to those they're training, the other Keyblade wielders looking to become masters, and eventually the 5 factions erupt into full-blown war. One of the leaders, having been told by the Master disaster is coming, collects a number of special wielders to survive the oncoming war. Called the Dandelions, they're sent to a different world to protect them from the war and isolate them from the knowledge that a whole lot of their friends just murdered the absolute crap out of each other. This is where we meet Ventus for the first time chronologically in the series. He's one of the Dandelions and in fact rises to become one of the 5 that take leadership roles after the war finally subsides. However, that's about all we know about him during this period. Again, the game is still in progress and most of that is covering the era after the Keyblade War, so yeah, if there's some big revelation about Ven or how the hell he shows up only about a decade and a half shy of the present of the series, it'll probably happen after I release this video. Considering there are other relevant characters popping up around this time period too, I guarantee you we're going to have to get an explanation about this time discrepancy at some point. So yeah, we fast forward to a couple of decades before the series proper and we meet Ericus, who is training alongside Xehanort to become Keyblade Masters. They succeed, but Ericus is distraught over how obsessed with darkness Xehanort has become, and the two eventually come to blows, which is where Ericus is left with distinctive facial scars. After that, Ericus doesn't see Xehanort for quite some time and ends up recruiting his own apprentices, the energetic Terra and the reserved but jovial Aqua. Xehanort too recruits his own apprentice, our boy Ventus. Again, no idea how the heck Ven got to this time period, but we don't need to dwell on that. He's here, we're dealing with it. As his master, Xehanort tries to force Ventus to give into the darkness to become a proper vessel for himself. Finding Ventus unsuitable for that aim, he instead splits Ventus's heart into 2 equal halves, one of pure light and one of pure darkness. This darker half ends up becoming its own entity known as Vanitas. This leaves Ventus himself fractured and he and his light begin to fade away. Xehanort was going to dispose of him, but that's when Sora's newly born heart gets involved and stabilizes Ventus. Intrigued by this, Xehanort drops Ventus off at Ericus' home, the line of departure, where the two are welcomed like family despite having the falling out from earlier. Over the next 4 years, Ventus befriends Terra and Aqua and becomes one of Ericus' pupils. In the intervening time, Vanitas, being all of Ventus' raw negative emotions, begins to form those emotions into creatures known as Unversed, which he lets loose across multiple worlds in order to further Xehanort's plans. Finally, 10 years prior to the first Kingdom Hearts, Terra and Aqua have their Mark of Mastery exam, overseen by both Ericus and Xehanort. Terra fails because he is unable to control his darkness, and Xehanort begins manipulating this failure and this dark attunement as a means of turning Terra into his next vessel. After this, Xehanort vanishes and the Unversed begin to attack the worlds. Terra is dispatched to find the errant master and destroy the monsters. While he receives his orders, Vanitas shows up to surreptitiously manipulate Ven's perception of Terra and to instill fear that he'll lose Terra as a friend if Terra leaves. When Ven witnesses Terra leaving anyway, he chases after, and Aqua is ordered by Ericus to follow both of them, both to retrieve Ven and to keep an eye on the darkness in Terra's heart. With that, the three jump from world to world, fighting unversed and unique threats while narrowly missing each other. Terra is manipulated multiple times into committing questionable if not downright evil acts, which make Ven and Aqua begin to question him considering they're usually following in the aftermath of those choices. Along the way, the three each have a run-in of some sort with Mickey Mouse, though most of the bonding really occurs between him and Aqua. The trio meet up again during an interlude at Radiant Garden, which is also where Aqua meets a 4-year-old named Kairi and wards her from danger with magic. After defeating a particularly powerful Unversed together, Ven, Aqua, and Terra begin to have a falling out. Terra trying to keep them out of the crosshairs of his growing darkness, and Ven refusing to go home until he knows Terra isn't going to fall into darkness. They split again, and Aqua and Terra find themselves at Destiny Islands just minutes apart from each other. This is where Terra passes on the ability to wield a Keyblade to Riku, as well as where Aqua sees a major connection between her friends and the two young boys on the island. Meanwhile, Ventus encounters Master Xehanort, who reveals his plan to form the Keyblade from Ven and Vanitas, and even reveals that Master Ericus knew the truth all along, though probably just didn't want to admit it to Ven or to himself. This prompts Ven to return to the land of departure and confront his master. Ericus, now resigned to the truth, tries to eliminate Ven to stop Xehanort's plan, but is stopped by Terra in the nick of time. Terra ends up misreading the situation and fights Ericus, but realizes what's going on and stops. This, however, leaves Ericus too weak, and Xehanort arrives to kill him. However, before dying, Ericus passes his heart onto Terra in one last fatherly act of protection, similar to how Kairi passed her heart off to Sora in the first game. Aqua learns about this going down from Yen Sid, and Ventus's past, at least his immediate past, is explained to him by Vanitas, and both are instructed to go to the Keyblade Graveyard, which is where Terra has been following Xehanort. The three manage to have a moment of quiet between them as they all recognize they've been played this whole time and reaffirm their friendships. Though Ven is kind of a downer by asking to be straight up killed if it looks like Xehanort will succeed. Probably one of the best battles I've ever seen breaks out, at least the one from the Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix secret ending, which results in a number of incredibly bad things, such as Ventus fusing with Vanitas to create the Keyblade and Terra giving into darkness and being possessed by Xehanort. However, Terra is literally too angry to die, and his willpower alone possesses the discarded armor of his in order to fight his now Xehanort-controlled body. If you'll remember, this is like what Riku did back in the first game, but on steroids. Likewise, Ven manages to defeat an internal battle with Vanitas, which ends up destroying the Keyblade, at least in combination with efforts made by Aqua and Mickey on the outside. When the Keyblade is destroyed, its energy washes over everyone in the battle, scattering them to the far edges of space, though the possessed armor is still left in the graveyard to become an infuriatingly hard optional boss fight in Kingdom Hearts 2. Ven and Aqua are rescued by Mickey and brought back to the Wizard Tower, where Yen Sid explains that Ven is currently asleep and won't awaken until his heart returns. It kinda just wandered off after the battle. Aqua takes Ven's body back to the land of departure and finds Ericus' Keyblade among the decaying world. She seals Ven inside a place called the Chamber of Waking and uses the world's keyhole to twist it into a protective castle that will confound anyone looking for the chamber. Castle Oblivion. She then travels to Radiant Garden, where she finds the Xehanort-possessed Terra, and after a prolonged fight, he is left comatose and missing his memories. He begins to sink into the darkness, quite literally, and Aqua sacrifices herself and her protective armor to allow him to escape unharmed. As a consequence, she is trapped in the realm of darkness with no way out. Terranort is found by Ansem and recruited as an assistant. At some indeterminate point inside of that body, Xehanort and Terra stand off against one another, vying for control of their body, which we'll probably learn the results of in Kingdom Hearts 3. Ven's heart, meanwhile, finds its way to Sora, where he is presumably still kept. Again, I have the rough theory that Roxas and Ventus are actually one and the same, but I can always be proven wrong. I just like throwing that little ditty out there. Back with Aqua, she's having a jolly old time in the realm of darkness, with the existential dread making her want to give in and become part of the darkness. Luckily, she's rescued by Terra and Ventus' Keyblades and regains her will to live. How these Keyblades show up? I don't know, I guess some force of will still exists in the great ether of life. She fights on, encountering Heartless for the first time in her life and discovering several of the worlds that are being consumed leading up to the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. Thanks to the nature of the realm, she can't tell how long she's been trapped, so she has no bearings on what's going on in the realm of light. During her travels, she finds a figment of Terra that manages to talk to her, explaining that he's become part of the darkness. Xehanort uses this brief interlude to squeeze Ventus' location from her, but Terra fends him off well enough that he has to use Dark Claws to drag her further in. Again, she finds herself wanting to give in to the darkness when she's rescued by King Mickey. He explains that it's been 10 years since she vanished into the darkness and that he's looking for the Dark Realm Keyblade. The two find the blade, and when they discover Riku is trying to close the door between realms at the end of the first game, she again sacrifices her own chances of escaping to distract the Heartless so that Mickey and Riku can shut the door forever. Trapped again, she wanders and eventually finds Ansem the Wise, who catches her up to speed in what's shakalacking in the world of light. And that's about where we leave off on all the major players from the prequel games. One of the big goals in Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be saving them, so we'll see how well that goes. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem at all. Yeah. I was going to make that the end, but as a last minute addition, I forgot that Ventus does make some cameos in Dream Drop Distance that are of note. Not only is he counted among the hearts that Sora has touched, but when Sora is being pulled into the darkness, Ventus' armor gets summoned around him to protect him, and actually serves as the final boss when it gets completely corrupted in Sora's stead. This lends some credence to the theory that Ventus was the disembodied voice guiding Sora all the way back in the first tutorial in Kingdom Hearts 1. This is ignoring Nomura's statement that it was Mickey years ago, but that was more than likely before Ventus was conceived completely. So it might come into play, but I don't know. Have some fun theorizing with that one. So now we're finally covering the more peripheral characters, ones who do have some bearing on the plot, but really don't have much meat on their bones or don't really pull any of the strings. Front and foremost are the members of Organization 13, and by a long shot I think these are the characters that got the short end of the stick when it came to introductions. Still, they have some bearing on the plot, and even though initial introductions left them a little half-baked personality-wise, they've steadily gotten more fleshed out as the series has continued. Organization 13, as in the original one introduced in Chain of Memories in Kingdom Hearts 2, is a collection of powerful nobodies assembled by Xehanort's nobody, Xemnas, with the express goal of summoning Kingdom Hearts. Because nobodies are just the body and soul of a person devoid of any heart, they have a natural crave to fill that heart-shaped hole, and Xemnas preys on that hunger to manipulate most of these members. Because I've covered Xemnas, Roxas, Axel, and Xion separately, there are only 10 members left to cover, and I'm going to try and cover them in the order of the ones that we have the least information to work with to the ones that are going to take far longer to cover because we have a lot of information to work with. Sadly, this means Luxord is front and foremost on my list, even though he's my favorite member of the organization. A smooth-talking British gambler, Luxord is one of the 2 members that we don't know the origins of and arguably know the least about. He's the 10th member to have been recruited, and his biggest contribution to the plot is investigating the cursed gold in Port Royale for application by the organization. Beyond that, he's probably one of the better boss fights in Kingdom Hearts 2 thanks to its creativity, but after that, he doesn't do anything other than talk, mildly set our protagonist back, and die. He is interesting when it comes to his outlook on life. Since he's a gambler, he's very blasé about the actual goals of the organization, resigning himself to the fact that he's a pawn, even though he seems to have some disdain over the fact that the lower-ranked organization members aren't privy to important information. He enjoys gambling in all games of chance, and seems to only really care about the next game he gets to play, even to the point that his comments can occasionally come off as dissent or treasonous. Demyx is the other character we don't know much about before he became a nobody, other than that he's the 9th nobody to join the organization. He doesn't really do much in these games beyond stealing a magic seal in Olympus Underworld and trying to goad Roxas out of Sora briefly. He also has one of the most annoying boss fights in the entire series. Seriously, run up to any Kingdom Hearts fan and yell, "Dance, Water, dance!" and watch as everyone shudders with frustration. He's probably the most apathetic towards the organization, as he usually only cares about lazing around all day playing his sitar. That's really about it. He gets killed by Sora when he dances with water one too many times. Whether he and Luxord became whole again remains to be seen, though they are definitely present in Kingdom Hearts 3. Here's hoping we get a chance to learn who Mighty and Dorlu might be. Xaldin is the 3rd member of the organization and is the first that we'll be covering today that we know the actual name of. Originally called Dylan, he was one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices back in the heyday of Radiant Garden. He seemed to serve primarily as a guard for Ansem's castle and was even present when the Xehanort-possessed Terra was discovered in the city courtyard. Of course, when the 6 apprentices turn on Ansem the Wise in order to conduct more questionable, ultimately evil experiments, he becomes the nobody Xaldin. Xaldin takes the strict guard persona that Dylan had and cranks it up to 11, becoming almost sadistic thanks to his jealousy over not having a heart and being unable to feel emotion. Yeah, jealousy over not feeling emotions. Emotions like, you know, jealousy and spite. I'm pretty sure everyone that cared about getting a heart in this organization is rock stupid, otherwise I don't think Xemnas would have been able to pull the wool over their eyes for very long. Xaldin's main interaction with the plot is at Beast's castle, where he attempts to manipulate Beast into becoming a powerful Heartless for Sora to kill. Ultimately, he's cornered and defeated by Sora. Lexaeus was once known as Alias, and was another of Ansem's glorified guard dogs, apprentices in charge of security. Unlike Dylan, he was of a more noble inclination, though he did match his partner in stoic confidence. Becoming the 5th member of the organization in the wake of the assistants dabbling in darkness, Lexaeus didn't really change beyond relaxing his moral centers, which, side note, anyone else questioning how good any of Ansem's apprentices could have been when they were openly experimenting on humans to produce Heartless? Seriously, they in the story act like they're good people, but what the hell happened that Dylan and Lexaeus were okay with kidnapping and medical torture? Hell, throw Ienzo in there too, Ansem was practically like a father to him, but we'll get to him in a bit. He served as one of the few genuinely loyal members of the organization at Castle Oblivion. Learning that these rebels were trying to make Sora a puppet to overthrow Xemnas, Lexaeus and his colleague Zexion decided to make a puppet of Riku in order to root out the traitors. This doesn't go well for Lexaeus, and he is eventually struck down by Riku. Zexion is the 6th member of the organization and probably one of the most intelligent. Born Ienzo, his parents died at an early age, leaving him in the care of Ansem the Wise, making him the youngest of the King Sage's assistants. After becoming a nobody, he served as one of the organization's loyalists inside Castle Oblivion and in fact orchestrated the countermeasures taken against the rebel faction. Most of this involved manipulating Riku, but that only ends with Lexaeus dead and Riku alive to know too much, especially when Sora kills the traitors by sheer coincidence. He attempts to kill Riku himself using guile and trickery to do it, but Naminé interferes and Riku badly wounds Zexion in the process. When he retreated, he was met by Axel and a replica of Riku, which we'll touch on in just a minute. Axel has Zexion killed by the replica in order to further his friend Sayx's ranking in the organization and to tie up loose ends at the castle, considering at that point Zexion was the only member from the castle crew left standing. Vexen was the number 4 in the organization and was its lead scientist. In his human life, he was called Evan and shared a close relationship with Ienzo, a bond forged over mutual interest in science. Aside from Ansem, he seems to be Ienzo's primary caretaker and seems grateful to Ventus when he rescues the boy from some unverse during the events of Birth by Sleep. After the assistants take a dive into darkness and Evan becomes Vexen, he takes on a crueler, more mad scientist-like tone. He heads research into replicating people and nobodies, the first one being Xion, who would serve as a backup for Roxas. After that proves successful, at least in the short term, he begins to try and perfect his work. This culminates in the work at Castle Oblivion, where he, Zexion, and Lexaeus work together in order to stop the rebel elements in the organization. Using data obtained in the battle with the real Riku, he creates a replica of the boy and sends it out against him. The replica loses, but Vexen still introduces it to the rebel faction as an option for dealing with Sora, hoping to use the absolute obedience of the clone to destroy Sora before the rebels can manipulate him. Unfortunately, this gets turned on its head when the rebels use Naminé to change the clone's memories to mirror those of the actual Rikus, as well as Sora's, in order to breed more confusion within Sora. After the clone fails multiple times to manipulate Sora, Vexen himself is dispatched to deal with Sora. However, Vexen is spiteful and leads Sora into memories tied to Roxas and begins explaining what's actually going on, both about Roxas existing as Sora's nobody and the rebels' plans to manipulate Sora. There's a brief fight between the two before the monologuing gets underway, but when it finally does, Vexen is struck down by Axel as a mean of keeping the replica program out of the hands of the rebels. Zeldin, Lexaeus, Zexion, and Vexen reformed into their human counterparts Dylan, Elias, Ienzo, and Evan back in Ansem's study alongside Lee, and they're currently still there. By the looks of things, they'll actually be helping out Sora and his gang in Kingdom Hearts 3, but I could be wrong. Larzané and Marluxia are interesting. Aside from Roxas and Xion, they are the quote-unquote youngest members of the organization, Marluxia being number 11 and Larzané being number 12. Until recently, however, we didn't know their human identities were, and this is where the Key spin-off game comes back into play to mess with everyone's heads. You see, back after the Keyblade War, there were 2 other dandelions of specific note, Lauriam and Alrena. Now, again, this is incredibly recent information, so I don't have much, but we know that they survived the war by fleeing to the other world with the rest of the Dandelions, and that Lauriam served as one of the 5 replacements for the Council Masters that fell in the war. We also know that he's looking for his younger sister, Strelitzia, who was supposed to be among the Dandelions, and he asked for Alrena's help in that matter. Strelitzia, she kinda got the short end of the stick, so that subplot is probably not gonna end very happy for Lauriam. Regardless, somehow, like Ventus, they wound up at least close to the present day, losing their hearts and becoming nobodies. Under their new identities, they became the 2 central rebellious figures inside the organization, which when you consider there's 2 of them versus 11 other members, heck, 12 other members, that's pretty ballsy. Marluxia is, for some reason, made Lord of Castle Oblivion, and he manipulates that position as best he can to put him in place to usurp Xemnas. Larzané, and I know I'm technically pronouncing that wrong, but Larxene is a stupid name and Larzané sounds way better, serves as Marluxia's assistant for the most part, doing her part to taunt Sora and plant doubt in his mind to make him more pliable to the rebels' cause. Unfortunately for the two, a series of double crosses from Vexen and Axel, as well as Sora's unpredictable nature, end up throwing a wrench in their plans to use Naminé's memory scrubbing to their advantage. When they lose control of Naminé, thanks to Axel's interference, Larzané attempts to kill Sora outright, but it's instead killed in return. And Marluxia isn't far behind when, after an extended battle, he's destroyed by Sora. Why these two tried to overthrow Xemnas is never quite revealed. There's some lip service to them being too arrogant, but it's definitely interesting how they're the only 2 nobodies that we see actively do not want hearts, but other than that, we've got nothing. Maybe we'll learn more when More of Key is released or when Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, but until then it remains a mystery. Sayx is an interesting figure. He's the 7th member of the organization to be recruited, but serves as its second in command, which is odd considering you'd think one of the original 6 would be closer to Xemnas. His human counterpart Isa, which I can't decide to pronounce Isa or Isa, so that's on me, was best friends with Lee when they were kids, and even back then he was a stickler for rules and punctuality, though certainly more playful than he eventually became as a nobody. After becoming part of the organization, he serves as the main distributor of orders and commands, which is what leaves Xemnas time to plan and scheme. Thanks to this, during most of 358 Days Over 2, he's the primary mission giver for Roxas and the rest of the organization members, meaning you get to see a whole lot of his face and hear a whole lot of his derisive attitude. This also means he was the one to order Axel to infiltrate Castle Oblivion and snuff out the rebellious elements that got sent there. When Axel begins befriending Roxas and Xion, it causes a rift to form between him and Saïx. He does what he can to stop Roxas from leaving during the whole Xion incident, mostly by throwing down fisticuffs at the organization's door, but he's ultimately unsuccessful. His next big individual contribution to things is when he kidnaps Kairi from Axel and rejects Sora's plea to join the darkness to find his friends during the war scene in Kingdom Hearts 2. And like most of the antagonists in Kingdom Hearts 2, he doesn't really do much. He shows up periodically to taunt Sora, to taunt Kairi, kinda gets in the way of her escape attempt but is batted aside by Riku, but ultimately he's just kind of a jerk through the majority of the game. I'd say Sora corners him, but really what happens is Sora walks into what seems to be Saïx's bedroom and raffle stomps him into next week. He could have left at any time, but I guess he had a sense of dramatic timing. Anyway, his last words are crying out to Kingdom Hearts for a heart of his own before fading into the darkness. He technically awakens with the rest of Ansem's apprentices, but he's dragged away by the young Xehanort and Xigbar to become part of the new Organization 13. Speaking of, Xigbar is the last character we'll be touching on, and the reason why relates to him being the most intricate. You see, back in his human life, unlike the rest of Ansem's apprentices, Braig was already kind of a tool, and if he wasn't outright evil, he was certainly skirting the lines of morality with how he carried himself. When the original Xehanort informed him of his plan to form the Keyblade, he willingly went along with his plan on the condition that he got to use a Keyblade. He plays an integral role in pushing Terra towards embracing darkness, but loses his eye in the process. He's also present during the final battle with the Keyblade, positioning himself as a distraction until Vanitas could arrive to play his part. After that, he got the hell out of Dodge and fled. When Terranort shows up at Radiant Garden, he's literally the first on the scene, and when Terranort is made one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices, Braig is the first to go about trying to recover Xehanort's memories, which I guess ultimately succeeds, even if it doesn't happen the way he intended it to. While he's technically the fourth to be turned into a nobody, his proximity to Xehanort and his schemes put him as the number 2 member of the organization, though that title doesn't really seem to come with any kind of authority. Again, like Saïx, he doesn't seem to do too much, but he's a constant background presence among the organization, always sneaking and scheming and spying, and it's very likely that he's the most well-informed character in the entire cast. He does do some training with Roxas when he's still a rookie, taunts Sora when he started out in Kingdom Hearts 2, and summons a powerful Heartless in the Land of Dragons, but those aren't super relevant to the story. Even his death is just a minor setback, as at this point he's more than aware that he'll be fine, so when Sora kills as nobody, he just rolls with it by jeering Sora. Reforming as Braig, he helps young Xehanort collect Iza and form the new Organization 13. He also shows up to directly influence Sora's Mark of Mastery so that Xehanort can possess him, taking a leading role manipulating Sora. He retreats with the rest of the organization and will more than likely be one of the key players in Kingdom Hearts 3's plotline. Well, there you have it. Every member of Organization 13 has been covered. I hope this has come to help you understand at least who these people are and where they stand in relation to Kingdom Hearts 3's narrative. Many of these characters have probably been rolled into the new organization, though at the present the only confirmed members of it are Xehanort, Xemnas, Ansem Seeker of Darkness, Braig, and Iza, though from what we can see in the trailers, it's very likely that Marluxia, Larxene, Demyx, and Vanitas are also among their numbers. At the same time, there's also a lot we don't know about this new organization, so we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching this recap series. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you managed to understand the Kingdom Hearts canon a little bit better this time around. Here's hoping Kingdom Hearts 3 shows one hell of a finale to this entire arc of the franchise, and hopefully it leaves room open for an even more exciting arc to take its place. Well, I have a long game to play. Catch you all on the flip side.